Laurie, let me start with you because obviously you've brought the cynicism to any United discussion over the last 2-3 years that we've had.
All me, not you.
Oh, absolutely all you. I mean, Adam as well. To be honest,
never me.
Both of you have been fairly cynical. Are you feeling a growing sense of optimism, or are you still slightly cautious?
There's definitely caution there, and to be honest, it changes depending on what day of the week you catch me and who United have beaten or lost to. But I think the main definite positive is Erik ten Hag and the fact that he's definitely made mistakes in this campaign, but his ideas and the way he's communicating himself and the decisions he's taking are impressive. I think it shows authority. I think it shows a clear direction. And if they can actually, provide the players that fit his style totally, then I think United could be onto something really special. I think he understands the connection with the fans. That's important. And actually, he has become more of a presence in press conferences, which is the one thing that people who covered him at Ajax sort of said, you might struggle here. He's not really going to give you anything. But I think he's adapted, or either their impression of what they expect from a manager is different. I suppose Louis van Gaal's kind of at the top end of the spectrum for the kind of character that you show in a press conference. But actually, Ten Hag, I think, has grown into the role and is sending messages in those press conferences. And I think the fans are certainly buying into it. We saw that with the Cristiano Ronaldo saga, where this is a player who's done so much for the club in the past and is a hugely recognised figure in the global game. But actually, most United fans were on Erik ten Hag's side on that one. So that's the positive. But yeah, I think if United suffer some injuries, you look at that bench and it's not great for substitutions, for rotations. Ten Hag has basically got his first choice 11, and that's kind of who he's going with, albeit he has made some changes to the defence, the back line in recent weeks. But I think he's got a clear idea of who his best 11 is. So if there's some injuries, that's the only question mark.
Do you think for the first time, just staying on Ten Hag before we come to the squad and so on and so forth, but on Ten Hag, Adam, for the first time since Ferguson, Manchester United don't have a manager that has a question mark over their future at the club, virtually from appointment?
Maybe. I mean, I think there was an even more promising period, which was, now it sounds a bit silly to say, but that period where Solskjaer first came in and basically just beat everyone. Some pretty difficult games along the way in that, I think, was kind of, if maybe even felt more promising at the time. I still think at the moment with Man United, you watch them in games and they give you like a good 25 minutes and then you'll watch them for 10 or 15 minutes and you're a bit like, I'm not sure where this is going. Even if they're playing Bournemouth, they'll switch off for 20 minutes and a better team probably scores a couple of goals. But there's definitely, I think, a clear spirit and unity and direction, as Laurie says. And I think a lot of that is a strength that's come from having someone who's got the guts to make difficult decisions. Go on.
But I suppose what I meant was, you look at all the other ones. If you look at Solskjaer, even when on that very good run, how long are they really going to stick with him? If is Pochettino available? Is so and so available? Is he really going to be the Manchester United manager for 4 or 5 years? Mourinho, really, how long is he going to stay at the club because he doesn't even live in Manchester? He stayed in a hotel the whole time. And backwards you could go. You could probably say the same with Van Gaal at times, and you could probably definitely say the same with David Moyes. There doesn't seem any doubt over who is the Manchester United manager for the next 3 or 4 years, whatever may happen to this squad in the second half of the season.
Yeah, I suppose the only unknown is if the club sells. And, who knows who that ownership could be and if they've got their own idea of what they want to do. But I think he's in an incredibly strong position at the moment at the football club. But given the current ownership situation, given the makeup of the playing squad, given where the club were to where the club is now, it's definitely the strongest, I think, that an individual manager has probably been in terms of that kind of dynamic of managing up and managing down. I think it's also a lot healthier that it's not Ed Woodward that he's reporting into as well. It all feels a lot calmer, but equally, it's probably only 3 or 4 months since we're sat here after they lose to Brighton and Brentford, and they're paying over the odds for Casemiro and for Anthony. So it's hard to know until you have sort of these next 1 or 2 windows. We can see the strength that he's got in terms of the playing squad, in the dressing room, on the pitch, but does that control and that sort of calm authority, does that then exude into the market, which will ultimately decide like how successful his reign is?
Laurie, on that?
Yeah, I think that's the big question, isn't it? Because I've got a piece on the recruitment at the moment on The Athletic that delves into this a little bit. But the last summer, from a United point of view, they will say that Erik ten Hag was a new manager, so they couldn't necessarily say to targets, before April, May, which I still think would probably be enough time to convince, certain signings, but they couldn't say in long-term advance who their manager was going to be and what the shape of the club was going to be. So it perhaps put them at a disadvantage to get signings over the line. So that's when you get to a point where they're signing players after they've had these 2 defeats and the pressure's on. Agents will ramp up the fee, clubs will ramp up the fee. They also harboured too long on Frenkie de Jong, in all honesty, because he didn't really want to leave Barcelona. And so is that going to change into the summer window? We're already seeing it in January where they're having to shop in the basement, with Wout Weghorst. He might come in and do well if they get that over the line, but he's a 30-year-old striker who in normal circumstances United wouldn't be after. It's just that they're in a very small pool of options because they overspent in the summer, and Joel Glazer has said there's no more money. I can't dip into the revolving credit facility again. We've already spent 200 million on the company credit card, so I'm sort of putting the wallet back in my pocket at this point. So will that change in the summer? Ten Hag certainly is pushing for different signings, but I think it has come back to his point of view quite a lot. United have got this massive scouting system. Are we going to see players ahead of the curve that United are kind of not taking a chance on, but being proactive with signing rather than going for players that Erik ten Hag, knows or has worked with before?
His line on recruitment was very telling, wasn't it? Ten Hag. The club has brought an unimaginable number of players in recent years who have not been good enough. Most purchases have been average, and at United, average is not good enough. United's shirt weighs heavily. Only real personalities who can perform under great pressure can play here. I mean, that one paragraph immediately endears him even more to Manchester United fans, I would have thought. But maybe that also highlights why they might move quite slowly in any transfer window, because he will be very big on making sure he's got the right kind of person.
I mean, that was the intro to my piece this morning, and the fact that he called scouts together, one of his first things to do was call the senior guys in that look at players and say, this is my idea for a Manchester United player. And obviously, as well as the technical and athletic qualities that he wants, for a high pressing team, character was the main thing, personality. I mean, it's why they've signed Casemiro, why they've signed Martinez.
They rave behind
Anthony.
The scenes about Casemiro,
yeah.
don't they? About
hugely.
him as a man.
Hugely, yeah. And the football staff are thrilled with him. The leadership that he brings to the club, the calmness as well, the kind of intelligence on the pitch. I mean, notice that he was the player at Molineux. I don't know if he's done this in other games, but it was just the game that I was at and noticed it. Casemiro was the one that Ten Hag brought across to the sidelines during a break in play, showing him the instructions. And he specifically, it was like 70 minutes. He then went to Rashford, then went to Martial to pass on the message. And 6 minutes later, Rashford scored. So there we go. Ten Hag's a genius. But yeah, so character's a big thing. And I don't know if I think Ten Hag's open to ideas. He's not someone that will look at Wout Weghorst and say, well, he scored 2 goals in 20 games for Burnley. He's out of the question. He actually, I think he's open to considering how different players can fit in at different scenarios, and how actually, Wout Weghorst clashed with his Burnley teammates. They thought he was, very confident, bordering on arrogance. And I don't think it worked out well for him there because of that. Whereas at Old Trafford, okay, maybe the same thing happens again, but actually, at least he'll be someone that won't be overawed by Old Trafford and won't be, cowed by big personalities. He'll fight fire with fire, you'd imagine. But I do think that Ten Hag is open. I mean, look at Marko Arnautovic. That was another reason why they went for him, and it was aborted, probably correctly. You know, he'd spent 2 years in China before going across to Bologna. And also there was sort of off the pitch stuff, wasn't there, that I think brew a big backlash amongst fans. And they went away from that one. But I think Ten Hag is not somebody that says it has to fit this exact brief, otherwise I'm not interested. I think he understands, he's quite pragmatic in the players that are available for the budgets, notwithstanding the fact that, yeah, he would like signings and he would like, you know, a team full of players that he's picked.
Just to go back to what you're saying about buying characters, I think you can buy characters and you can develop characters. And I think that's the bit of Ten Hag that I've been really, really impressed with.
Yeah, good point.
So far. So you look at someone like Luke Shaw, who I think has really sort of grown in both in terms of how well he's playing, but also, you know, the fact that he's able to just slot into centre back, play really maturely, play basically exactly how Ten Hag wants him to play in that role. Obviously the transformation we've seen in Marcus Rashford. I think we're seeing a change in Bruno Fernandes. I think the style of play it's probably less stylistically pleasing in terms of less goals and things like that, but probably far more suited to what the manager wants him to do for the team. And then obviously you've got those kind of you know, players like De Gea and Varane and Dalot that are just they just look happy and comfortable, and that all creates a better environment. So if you'd say like what's been the best thing about Ten Hag, I would actually say it's the fact that he can not only identify who's a good character to bring into a group, as you would say definitely with Martinez and Casemiro, Malacia in a different way, but also that ability to actually challenge people to basically just become better people.